What's up, guys? Dan here for BladeReviews.com. Welcome to my review of the Spyderco Gayle Bradley. This is a hard use folder from Spyderco, designed by Texas knife maker Gayle Bradley, who also happens to compete in Blade Sports International cutting competitions. He actually won Blade Sports one year, so he is a maker who practices what he preaches. Doesn't just make knives, but he cuts a lot of stuff with them too. I'm very excited about this review. This is an awesome knife, so let's get into it. I've got some quick specifications and we will get moving. So the Gayle Bradley has an overall length of 8 inches. It's got a 3.44 inch long blade and it weighs 5.5 ounces. So this is a nice sized knife. On the larger end, if you're considering this for EDC, at least in my experience, it's on the larger end. I think it would also make a decent quote-unquote tactical knife. It's also a work knife. I think first and foremost, this was designed to be something to just get work done. So I got a couple size comparisons. I thought it might be interesting to put a Paramilitary 2 next to the Gayle Bradley, and they're pretty much the same size. Gayle Bradley might be slightly larger. They're about the same. I've also got a Strider SNG, and the Strider is once again about the same size. So there you go. Not too big, not too small. I like the 3.44 inch long blade. It's a nice size for daily use and a bit more. So speaking of blades, we've got that ultra satin finished piece of steel here. It's got a high hollow grind, as you can tell from the way the light is catching it, and it also has a little bit of a swedge running along the top too. I like the kind of humpback shape of this blade with the spider hole here. A lot of character, very interesting. The knife is ground thin. You've got a 3mm piece of steel here, and it features Gayle Bradley's logo and the great state of Texas. As somebody who has lived in Texas for over 10 years, I'll tell you, they don't just slap that on anything. It really has to mean something to bear the Lone Star State on it. And in this case, I think it's very appropriate. Blade steel on this knife is CPM M4, and wow, I am extremely impressed with CPM M4. This is my first experience with it, and I'll tell you right out of the box, it was one of the sharpest knives I've ever received from Spyderco. I mean, just incredibly sharp, sticky sharp, super aggressive edge, and I couldn't resist taking this one out back and cutting a little bit of leather with it. I just wanted to see what it would do to leather, and you know, we're talking lightsaber kind of qualities through the leather there. I had a doubled up piece of leather, ultra thick, rough cowhide, and it made quick work of that. No problem at all. Very impressive. Very impressive. So at that point, I moved on to a rope cutting test, and what you're seeing there is some 5-inch thick manila rope, a 3-foot section of it, and I cut approximately once every inch, so you're looking at about 35 cuts, and this blade performed flawlessly. I mean, really, it's so aggressive, it's so sharp, it decimated that manila rope. It easily could have done 2 times as much rope, so I was impressed, but my hand was also getting tired, so I wanted to move on to something else, and I selected cardboard. And once again, this isn't your grandma's cardboard that I was using. This is some heavy-duty stuff. I did try it on some like USPS boxes. Of course, these are boxes I've already used, and they didn't stand a chance against the Gayle Bradley. I moved on to some really thick cardboard. Some of it was well over 1/4 of an inch thick, double, triple ply, really nasty stuff. And this knife, it made easy work of it, really did. But by the end of cutting all that cardboard up, you could feel that the M4 had lost its luster, and indeed, I couldn't shave hair off my arm, I couldn't cut paper cleanly, so it was time to give the M4 a little bit of a touch-up. And for this, I decided just to throw it on the sharp maker. I wanted to learn a little bit about the steel. I wanted to see if it would easily take an edge. I really wasn't in the mood to sit down and like hand sharpen this thing for half an hour or whatever. I'm pleased to say that the M4 takes an edge extremely easily. I mean, you could just, the moment I put it on the stone, it felt like it wanted to take that edge. Some steels you really have to fight with. You got to be patient and work. The M4 took an amazing edge with very little effort. So I was quite impressed with that, and moved on to some carving tests. I had some 2x2s, was just taking chunks, I was whittling, I was carving, and wow, extremely aggressive, very tough steel, had no issues with chipping, had no issues with the edge rolling, and this thing was all business. And it's still razor sharp after cutting through all that wood. I can still easily take hair off of my arm, let's say, with this blade. So no problem at all in the cutting test. I was extremely impressed with the ability of M4. Let's talk a little bit more about it. It is a high-speed tool steel. It's high carbon and high vanadium. Very tough, very wear resistant. This is powdered, being CPM, so it has an extremely fine grain structure. It takes a really nice edge. It is non-stainless though, so that's something to keep in mind. For me, not a big issue. I haven't had any problems with it, but then again, I haven't been cutting up apples and oranges at lunch every day with this knife. I haven't been leaving it in salt water or leaving it dirty or anything like that. I think that the benefits of this steel well outweigh any potential cons associated with it being a non-stainless steel, at least for my purposes. So there you go. I think it's a fantastic blade, wonderful steel. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about the handles here. And what we have are carbon fiber scales over full stainless steel liners. The liners are quite thick. They've been beautifully finished. They are mirror polished and have been skeletonized to reduce the weight a little bit. I think that's a nice touch, as the original Gayle Bradley did not come with skeletonized liners. So definitely lightens the knife up a little bit. The carbon fiber is just like the carbon fiber found on the Sage 1. So it's that kind of quilted or textured carbon fiber. It's actually a very thin piece of carbon fiber over a black G10 or high density laminate here. And I don't have a problem with that. It looks nice, wears really well, and keeps the price of the knife reasonable. It's a flow-through construction, so you've got some pillars. You also have your lanyard tube and a generous sized lanyard hole. So if you want to use a lanyard with it, you can. And generally the handle has been beautifully finished, so very, very nice. Now my only issue with this handle, it has to do with the ergonomics to some extent. Now you'll notice that this carbon fiber is actually an inlay, and the liners are peeking out around all the edges here. Now I don't have a problem with that from an aesthetic standpoint, but I can't help but wonder if this knife would have been more comfortable if they had flush mounted the scales with the liners. So I understand this is a work knife, so maybe they did this to provide more traction and texture when you're wearing gloves, but I found it to potentially be a little uncomfortable. And also inside the liners, all the edges on this knife are very sharp. So not just your cutting edge, but along the spine of the blade, it's quite sharp. The spider hole is sharp, which I don't mind because it serves a purpose, but inside here it actually gets quite sharp. So I just can't help but wonder, what if they had rounded those edges out a little bit and flush mounted the scales to the liners? You might have a more comfortable knife. But then again, if you're using gloves, this could be a welcome bit of texture and traction for you. So it just depends on what Gayle Bradley and Spyderco had in mind. Aside from that though, I do think the ergonomics are pretty solid. You do have this sort of bulbous handle here, a little odd looking really in relation to the rest of the knife, but it feels very comfortable, as you can imagine. There's a thumb ramp with nice jimping on the back of the blade here. It's aggressive but not too aggressive, so I didn't find it really tore my thumb up too much. You also have something of a finger choil here, so you can really get in there, control the knife, and get some precision work done with it. So I think the ergonomics are good. I would like to see the inside of the handles here just kind of knocked out a little bit so they're a little less aggressive. Let's talk a bit about the pocket clip, and the pocket clip is a Spyderco hourglass clip, and this one has the distinction of arriving with a really unique black chrome finish. So it's kind of reflective there, as you can see, really nice and kind of an upscale detail on this knife. So the clip itself is quite good. It rides relatively low in the pocket. It's not a super low ride clip, but relatively low. And you have the option here for 4 corners carry, so tip up, tip down, right side, left side. Nice to see. The holes, the pocket clip holes also don't really break the lines of the knife up too much, so it's functional, still looks alright. The pocket clip itself is very nice. And the knife carries well for what it is. I mean, it is a 5.5 ounce knife, but you do get something for that extra weight. You get a very thick, comfortable handle that is quite strong. You know, very, very thick liners on this knife. So you get a very strong knife. Of course, you do get a near 3.5 inch long blade as well, but definitely kind of a heavier knife for its size. I don't seem to mind that in pocket. I think you do get something for that extra weight. So there you go. Let's talk a little bit about the deployment and lockup. Of course, you've got your spider hole here. It's partially blocked by the handles, but it's still easy to get at on the right and left side. And the knife, it includes some phosphor bronze washers that you might be able to see peeking out through those pocket clip holes there. And the knife deploys very smooth and very fast. So nice, reliable deployment. Everything you like about the spider hole has been beautifully integrated into this knife. Lockup is excellent. I was doing some hard cutting with this blade, and I was never able to get any blade play at all on this knife. So very, very strong, very secure. No doubt thanks to the beefy lock geometry on the Gayle Bradley here. As far as constructive criticism goes with this knife, I do have a little bit of a complaint. Once again, it's kind of sharp in here, and it does tend to tear your thumb up a little bit if you're going to be opening and closing the knife all day, like I sometimes like to do. And also, there's not a ton of room here, so it can be a little more challenging to disengage this lock than on other knives. But that said, I think this is really a purpose-built tool first. It wasn't designed to be a toy or a collector's piece, at least primarily. I mean, it can certainly be used as that, and I've enjoyed it as both a tool and as a collectible. In the collectible sense, it's not the easiest knife to disengage, but it's not impossible either. I sometimes use my thumbnail. You can also just kind of stick the meat of your thumb in there. Close the knife up, no problem. So, very solid, very smooth, very fast. Just a lovely knife. I mean, final thoughts on the Gayle Bradley. I'm super impressed. It's got top-notch fit and finish, just beautifully made, immaculate knife. The blade steel M4 is tremendous. I'm a huge fan of it. And overall, it's just a very functional, well thought out, and robust design. So, big fan of the Gayle Bradley. A couple potential negatives. I found the edges along the liners of the knife to be pretty sharp, and I would, if it was my knife, I would knock that down a little bit and would also consider flush mounting the liners with the scales. Also, I found the liner lock a little bit difficult to disengage at times. None of these strike me as deal breakers, but you never know. You might be particularly sensitive to one of those issues, and I can totally respect that. So that is the Gayle Bradley, folks. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, this is Dan for BladeReviews.com. Take care, and I'll be back soon with another knife review.